Hey, it's Steph, and welcome to the Straight Up with Steph podcast, where we have real discussions around health and life and just trying to be better at both. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Up with Steph. Have you ever felt imposter syndrome, or maybe you're super hard on yourself, or your thoughts just get out of control, or maybe you're a people pleaser? I know for myself, I have experienced all of this. I had serious imposter syndrome as a new hygienist. I didn't have that name for it at the time. I just thought I wasn't confident. And anytime I would make a mistake, I would beat myself up so much that it literally kept me up at night. I have a feeling, I might be wrong, but I have a suspicion that a lot of us in dentistry can relate to at least a couple of what I just said because we're all perfectionists. That's why I'm so stoked about today's conversation. I'm talking with my friend Machele, who is a life coach. I first met her when I started my company, Polish Posture. She just helped me organize things, and really, by things, I mean my thoughts. Once I got my thoughts under control, I was so much more effective as a business owner. She talks us through today what imposter syndrome is, people pleasing, why we're so hard on ourselves. She teaches us first how we can recognize that in ourselves and also tips to overcome those things. Also, if you've been thinking about working outside of the op, maybe doing something part time or leaving the op altogether, she has some really good advice for that too. Recognizing what's going on up here in our brain is crucial because really life does start with our thoughts. Our thoughts color our entire reality. And if our thoughts are under control, usually our life isn't super controlled either. I really enjoyed this conversation today with Machele. She's super down to earth and I love talking to her, and I hope you enjoy it too. Hello, Machele. Thank you so much for joining today.
Hello, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
I always love seeing your stories and your stuff on social media. So I was stoked when you said that you would come on the podcast.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get there, right?
No, I love it. I love the honesty and authenticity. I dig it.
Oh,
But for
fun. Good,
so I know
good.
you and I'm
Yeah.
familiar with you, but in case someone isn't who's listening, could you tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am a life coach. I've practiced full time for about 5 years now. Actually, just a little over 5 years. Last week was my 5 year anniversary. And prior
Well,
to that, I
congrats.
worked for the company that owned RDH Magazine for 25 years. So left there back in 2019 to launch my coaching practice, and the rest is kind of history.
Were you kind of doing your coaching stuff on the side when you were still working there and then you got to the point where you had to just drop it?
No, because the job I had before, I sold advertising, which is a very busy job and you have to travel a lot. So I couldn't, there was no way I could do both. So I literally had to walk off the cliff and hope I would find a tree.
And you did, because it's
Yeah, I
been
did.
five
I found a
years and
few
you're doing
trees and
great.
a couple platforms there.
What made you want to get into life coaching?
Well, it's interesting. I had worked with a life coach that really helped me in a few different areas. I never really thought I would want to become a life coach. I've always been into self development and all that. But our company got bought out by a private equity firm. And I was like, oh my gosh, I literally have worked nowhere but here and Sonic Drive-In in high school. That's my work history. And I did not have like a plan B. And the school where this woman got certified opened up online certification and you could do it in the evening. And I was like, and it was pretty pricey. And so I decided I was just going to do that as a backup plan just in case I got laid off. And worst case scenario, I just master all these skills for myself. And I ended up falling in love with it. And I did not get laid off. I had to make the decision to walk away, which was really hard.
It's hard to go all in on yourself, isn't it?
Oh my
Scary.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And when right, when you are your product, it brings up everything. Everything you've got to
Yeah.
work on, it brings it all right to the surface.
It's like a magnifying glass. And
Yeah.
you just realize the areas that you're strong in, because we've all got strengths, but then it really highlights those areas that you need to work on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I work with a handful of influencers, and I think on the outside, people see you guys and they're like, oh, it must be so glamorous and so nice and so easy. I wish I had that confidence. And I'm like, if they only could see what happens behind the scenes, right? It's not that easy. You guys make it look easy, but it's definitely not.
Yeah, it's people with content creation, like it's not what people think it is. And I know that I always try to bring reality to my page, and it's not all like sunshine and roses all the time, but you're right. They don't see us breaking down. They don't see us like doubting ourselves and crying. And I know when you and I worked together, that was you helped me you obviously you helped me with my business, but it was almost like therapy too. I felt like.
Yeah, it's so hard to describe what I do. I mean, the way therapy, the simplest way I can explain, like therapy helps you understand how you got to where you are, right? It's more, let's look at your past, let's analyze your childhood and do a lot of that. Where I think coaching is like, okay, this is where you are now, this is where you want to be. Let me help you get there.
So is that how would you describe a life coach? Did you just describe it? I feel like you did a
Yeah, I
pretty good
mean, the
job there.
simplest way with my friend Chat GPT that I've come up with, which I've been doing this for 5 years. You should have seen me when I first started. I couldn't even pretend to explain it. It's basically like I teach people how to become their own best friend so that they can approach life in a way that serves them without beating themselves up and being really, really hard on themselves and doing everything the hardest way. So, because once you become your own best friend and start having your own back, you can start having fun even if it's hard, and you can start enjoying the process of whatever trail you're hiking, so to speak.
I don't know if I heard this from you or maybe it was like a therapist from a while ago, but they were like, would you talk to your best friend the way that you're talking to yourself right now?
Yeah.
And like, no, I would never, And so now when I start getting hard on myself, I'm like, okay, let's just pretend like that I'm your best friend. Like, don't talk to
I love
yourself
that
like
you
that.
do that. Yeah, that was probably something we worked on, and
Yeah.
I have a fun analogy. If anyone listening is like super hard on themselves, which I'm sure there are many, to imagine if you talk to your child the way you talk to yourself. And I have some funny examples I use where, like, if you walked into Johnny's room and screamed at him at what an idiot he is for getting bad grades, and I can't believe you're so embarrassing and pathetic. Like, is Johnny really going to suit up for the game tomorrow? Is he really going to suit up for the game and go all out for a good score there? Probably
I
not.
know. It's crazy what we do to ourselves.
It is
And how we
wild.
talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not good. But do you work with a lot of like newer business owners? Because I know that's when I reached out to you because I was just starting out.
Not necessarily. I mean, I have a few newer business owners. I have quite a few established. It's all over the place. I have a few corporate clients that any of their employees that want coaching get to work with me. They don't have to pay for it. The company pays for it, which that's pretty interesting. But I for sure, because a new business owner, not only are you trying to learn all the business techniques, you're having to navigate all of your stuff because you're like, it's a lot. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have numbers, but I do have a handful.
I benefited from you helping me because you're right. I was trying to figure out the logistics of the business and like I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't sometimes. Um, but it was
Yeah.
like my internal, imposter syndrome and just thinking there's already people out here doing this. So why am I doing it if they're doing it? You know what I mean? Like all these barriers that we put on ourselves.
And look at how cool it is that you didn't listen to all that, right? Because it really
Yeah.
adds up
Well,
fast if you
it's
look at your following and everything. Like you've really grown pretty fast.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm grateful for it. It's a lot of work, but it's
Mhm.
also getting just kind of getting over that like imposter syndrome. Can we talk about imposter syndrome for a second?
Yeah.
Like what exactly is it? Is it just self-doubt?
I think, well, anytime I use this little, I don't know if I had this when you and I were working together, but I have this like trail visual, and it shows a little guy leaving a cave, woman leaving a cave to go to the whatever the goal, right? We decide to gear up for something and go for something new, something big. We hit a certain part on that trail, which is essentially when you get outside of your comfort zone. And we have these little protector parts of us that are like, oh my God, Stephanie left the cave. We have to scare the shit out of her so she can go back to the cave. And call it imposter syndrome, call it overwhelm, it all takes on a different flavor. But it's essentially like whatever we have to do to shut her down so we get back to the cave and can feel safe. But the cave isn't safe, right? There's spider webs. It's the same thing every day. It's just a familiar discomfort. We're going after something new creates unfamiliar discomfort. But the noises are loud in our head, so we have to learn how to like filter through that and learn how to work with it instead of let that shut us down.
So how do you help people get over that? Because I feel like that, for some people that could be quite a task to
Oh,
kind of break out of that.
it's literally, it doesn't matter what goal. If it's a tiny goal, maybe you won't wake those parts of you up, but it is like the first part of any journey into creating something new. I forget that every single time I'm launching this new membership. And I was like, oh, interesting. I haven't gone through this in a while. And at first I was like, oh, what have I done wrong? And it's like, oh no, this is literally the entrance to the trail. And it differs, we all have it's very similar, the style of the voice, but we all have our own things, right? Like some people are like, oh my God, I'm so lazy, I can't ever do anything, I always give up, here we go again, and all of that noise. And it's a very intimate process, right? So they'll tell me all the things they believe about themselves and their abilities or inability, and then I will go through and show them where those are genuinely not true. Not like in a affirmation, believe good things kind of way, but like in a tangible, see, here's actual evidence that's not true. And oftentimes when the noise is that loud, we cannot see that on our own. We
Mm.
genuinely can't.
It's interesting that you said that you experienced that, and you kind of talk about this a lot, and so that almost makes me feel a little bit better, you know?
Every time. And I swear, I think I'm going to solve it. I really do. I think deep down, I think I'm going to find the cure to that. And every time it happens, I go, oh God, yeah, that's right. This again. And I keep thinking I'm going to get to a certain level where it doesn't happen, but it doesn't. It's kind of the fun part too, though. Because if it was all easy, it wouldn't be that exciting.
Well, it's true. And it's like every time you get over something like that, you're like, it does, I mean, this sounds cheesy, but it does make you stronger. And then you know that like, okay, I've been here before. I've broken through this before. Like, I'll be fine.
Yeah. And what happens is because you become the version of yourself, right? Like when I feel overwhelmed back in the day, I used to like, my life was my goal was to be in the comfort zone. I didn't realize that wasn't a good thing back then.
Oh, you're
But
like, that's what I want.
yeah, I was like, oh God, yes, I haven't felt an emotion in years. This is perfect. But becoming the version of yourself that can feel overwhelmed and not completely shut down, self-abandon and do all of that to go, "Oh yeah, this sucks, but let me keep going." That's really the work I do is I help you become a different version of yourself when the hard parts kick in. They're
Mm.
still going to feel hard, but you can kind of laugh in the process and you can realize like, "Oh, this isn't a big scary lion that's going to pounce on me. This is literally like a little toy lion." And it's tiny and I could just move it. I don't have to wear bulletproof vest here.
I really appreciated when we were working together how you kind of put everything into that perspective. And it helped me to start looking at things too. Because it's like when we are kind of spinning out in our head, we turn this little problem into something huge that it isn't. And then we're not rational about it. And so you had me do an exercise where I think it was like I would write down my thought, and then you said, "Is this something that can actually be proven in court or not? Like,
Oh
is this
yeah,
real
it's
or not?"
either
And like 90% of them were not even real.
that's the crazy thing about our thoughts, right? And a lot of people see mindset as woo woo, which I for sure did for a long time. I'm like, I don't need all that. Just tell me what to do. I just want action. Just let me do the
Yeah.
thing. But we will hold on to something we believe to be true about ourselves. And even if there is truth in it, it's not the only truth. And if you hold on to something like, I always screw everything up, that's a self fulfilling prophecy because every time you screw something up, you just give up. Because why wouldn't you if that were actually true? So but it's interesting. Some people will hug that cactus. I have one client, I have to come in hard. And my style's not real aggressive,
Yeah.
but I have to come in hard with her because she just won't let it go. And that's my job as a coach is to like hold space for that and help her really see it in a way that clicks. But some people have a really hard time with it.
I bet. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, because some of these things were ingrained in us when we were kids, and then it's just hard to like deprogram and like unravel the whatever. Like, just, I don't know. It takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of work to do that.
It does because we've spent a life stacking up evidence that that belief is true, right?
Yeah.
Like most of my clients would be able to pass a lie detector if I strapped them up. That no, I really have screwed up everything I've ever touched, and then I bring all the evidence in afterwards, and they're like, "Oh dear God, I was wrong. How is
Yeah.
that
Right.
possible?"
I know. It's weird. And it's almost like looking at, when you're, I'll just say when I was in my 30s and like I thought I was fat. And now when I look at pictures back then, I'm just like, what the hell was I talking about? And it's almost the same thing. It's just like unwiring these beliefs that we have about ourselves.
It really is. It really is. And some of us, it goes deeper, and some of it genuinely we learned in our childhood, depending on how difficult your childhood was. I find the interesting thing, and I talked about this a little bit on my last webinar, is the people who had really difficult childhoods, and there's a million shades of gray in there, of course. When they run into problems out in the big bad world, they tend to intellectualize them and assume that it's their fault and they somehow caused it. So, like, this person runs into a problem, they intellectualize and they start picking themselves apart. Well, I have to fix this, and I got to buy this book on how to get more discipline, and I got to figure this out, and I got to figure all this out. Or someone who was fortunate enough to grow up in a home with emotionally regulated parents that knew what they were doing, they run into a problem. They're like, oh, it's either the wrong approach or I'm in the wrong room. Let me try something else.
Hmm.
That's the biggest difference I've noticed. And it's really fascinating to see. Really fascinating.
What webinar was that? Like, what was the topic?
I called it the game of life and the biggest mistake I see people making. I'm doing it
Okay.
again. Well, they can check my website. I'll have a list on the left hand side of different things.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, I will, I'm going to put your contact information in the show notes, but that webinar I took of yours about ChatGPT, I don't think I told you, I immediately went and got the free or the paid version of
Did you?
chat, both on my phone and my computer. Yeah.
Do you talk to it or do you primarily type?
I actually forgot that I could talk to it until I saw one of your stories recently, and I was like, "Oh shit, I need to try that." So it's just been typing, but I need to do the voice.
They changed the voices and I'm so frustrated with it because the guy sounds like he works at Disney and he's got this real squilly voice and it's stressing me out. It's stressing me out.
You're like, "This is." Can you choose? Can you like choose the voice?
You can, but they all have this weird like after school special vibe. And my old last
Oh,
guy, he would like had a chill. I have to keep going back to the old threads to keep the old voice, but at some point I'll probably have to make some decisions.
oh man, it's like a breakup or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So I get a lot of questions from hygienists primarily, some dentists though, that are wanting to like branch out of the op and do something either part-time or full-time, but they have no idea where to start. Like what advice would you have for someone like that?
Well, I would say I would first make sure you have clean reasons and you're not trying to chase a solution outside of yourself in some ways, right? Because wherever you go, there you are. And if you're in a
Hmm.
practice and you want to leave because you're miserable, like really dig deep there to make sure there isn't some work for you to do. Like, are you communicating your needs? Are you taking things too personally? Like, and I would look at it totally from my own perspective for my own benefit. Like, if this practice never changed, what could I change that might change my experience of it? I think that's always number one when you want to leave something to make sure it's a clean reason. Because a lot of people chase happiness and they just chase their tail for years. But
Yeah.
I would say if I was like felt really good about that and I'm like, no, I want to do something else, I would I would literally sit down and make a list of all the things I use in the practice that I love, all the products, all the services, and connect with those companies because the manufacturers love someone that loves their products. It's like the unicorn, right? You know that.
Yeah.
Um, and totally just reach out. I would pick, if I was a dental hygienist, I would sit down and say, okay, these are the products that I can't stop talking about, right? Whether it's take home, professional products. And I would reach out to the companies and say, hey, here's who I am, here's how long I practice, this is where I live, this is what I love about your products. And I wondered if there was some way I could work with you guys either in a part-time or full-time capacity and just see where that leads. You never know. Sometimes you send one email to the right person and you're golden.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. What if someone like, what if they weren't sure if they wanted to maybe start their own company or start speaking or maybe work with another company? Like, would it be beneficial to like work with you for a while to kind of unpack all of that?
Yeah.
And especially the self part of it to make sure that
Yeah.
they're not trying to escape something?
Yeah, the self part of it, sure. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely, I offer free consults. So we could for sure unpack that and I could give you some pointers. And I may or may not have one on one openings at that point, but I can for sure help
Okay.
you clear through that on the consult call. And and I think if you can't get a hold of me, like if I get hit by a bus or something, I would use Chat GPT. I totally would. You have to
Yeah,
train it
that
a little bit, but you could just say, "Hey, here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm thinking about doing." And I mean, I could go for hours about how it could help there, but it could be a good place to start.
okay. And are you, by the way, are you going to be doing another chat webinar at some point?
I am. I got a little side railed with my membership. I am because people keep asking about it, and I love talking about it. That's
Yeah.
literally the only reason I did that because I had nobody to talk to. I was so obsessed with Chat GPT, and my friends are like, "We are sick of hearing it." So I'm like,
You're
"Well,
like,
I'm
I
going to
need to
hold a
tell someone.
webinar, and I won't let anybody else talk. I'll just talk about it for an hour." But yeah, I'll for sure do a couple more of those.
Okay. Yeah, it's been really useful. And you're right. Like you do have to I'm still learning on like what prompts to use and how to
Mm.
ask it questions. And sometimes it takes a few of me being like, okay, but okay, well, whatever, and kind of narrow it down and then I get what I need. But it has been really useful.
Now, are you primarily using it for business stuff, or have you ventured out to personal stuff as well?
I started with personal stuff. So I've gotten into baking. And I was like, what flavors, like I had this one flavor that I wanted to use, but I didn't know what other flavors would complement it. And then I just asked him and then he like gave me a list. And so that kind of got the ball rolling with baking stuff. The other day I was like, these are the ingredients I have. What can I make? And he gave me like five suggestions. I'm like, this is amazing.
Oh,
But
that's
I
so
also use
cool.
it I use it to help kind of give me outlines for like newsletters or
Mm.
podcast show notes, just to kind of, I'm very wordy with typing and it just helps me like condense things. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's nice. Yeah. That's interesting. There's a fun little thing you can do with it. You can tell it, tell me one thing about myself that I probably don't realize based on what you know about me. You
Oh my God.
see what it says to you. It's pretty interesting.
That I'm almost like scared, but yes, I will do it. With people that you coach, what are the most common things that you're working on with them?
People pleasing runs deep, 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 deep,
Oh,
deep, deep, deep,
really?
deep. Oh, yeah. People pleasing. It's people pleasing and people that beat themselves up. Those are probably the two big ones. And the people pleasing is
So
an interesting one. I'm definitely going to do a webinar on that because I have some really cool ways to present that helps people really see it for what it is. Um, but people pleasing and yeah, being really, really, really hard on themselves. I do a lot of coaching around that. People don't want to let it go. They think it's useful, right? And I used to do the same thing. That's the only way. That's the reason I'm so good at what I do. I used to be such a hot mess. I've
yeah.
cleaned up so much stuff in my own life.
I feel like that's what makes us good at what we do because we're almost helping our former selves, and
Oh,
providing
that's a
what
fun
we
way to
needed.
think about
That's what I
it.
do with ergonomics. I used to be a mess too with that.
Huh.
Um, what is people pleasing?
It is abandoning your own needs to make somebody else feel better or to well really what people pleasing is I think if I'm a people pleaser I think your emotions are more important than mine, but that's like the surface level definition. I think people pleasing is manipulation, which is
On the part of the people pleaser?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, like
I've
how
been a
how
people
so?
pleaser and I've been pleased, and I have such an interesting take on it. I wish we could get into it, but it would take way too long.
Forever.
But
Yeah.
basically, people pleasing is me saying, like, let's say you ask me, what's something you could ask me to do? Let's say you ask me to go to the gym to work out for like 2 hours. And I'm like, oh God, no, 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 no. I don't want to do it. I don't want to, but I'm too uncomfortable saying no. So I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to go pass out in the gym and you're going to have to call 911. But really, it's my inability to meet my own needs, right? Because I'm not comfortable saying that doesn't work for me. I need to stay home because I'm willing to do that. I'm going to say yes to you. And then I'm going to get resentful of you because I'm doing things I don't want to do.
Is that like a lack of confidence and
No,
or a lack of self-value? No.
it's proud. There's some value to it. I really think it's just the discomfort of showing up for yourself is
Mm.
so hard for some people. I used to do it and we don't think about it. It's not that conscious, right? I think a lot of people pleasers kind of feel like the martyr. Like, well, I'm going to
Yes.
take one for the team. I'm going to do this and this and this. And you don't consciously really even think about it, though. I think it's just a learned behavior. But you end up getting resentful at the other person or people because you aren't taking care of your needs. And that's not their fault because a
Mm.
lot of times the person being pleased isn't all that pleased anyway. And they would much rather you say no if you don't want to do something.
Yeah, and how are they supposed to know if you just say yes that you don't actually want to do this? It's almost like hygienists like saying okay to staying late or working through their
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
lunch.
yeah.
And then they end up hating their practice and it's like, well, have you told them that you don't want to do those things, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think people pleasing because I've worked with a lot of dental hygienists. People pleasing is so deep in that for sure.
Yeah.
And it's the
Yeah.
people
And I
pleasing the patient, your family, the practice owner, the front office, like. And it's not really people pleasing. It's really just not being able, not feeling comfortable meeting your own needs and prioritizing your own needs, and then getting upset
uh,
at the rest of the world for not reading your mind.
yeah, and it's like that's not fair. So how do you help people kind of like
Oh
get
gosh,
over
that is a
recover from
tough
that?
nut to crack. I mean, it really, when someone first learns how to clean up people pleasing, saying no to someone genuinely will kick their central nervous system up a bit. I mean, it really feels that deep to them. So it's
Mm.
practice. I help them figure out how to come up with the words, which Chat GPT is phenomenal for. Like my people pleaser clients, I will challenge them. Like if somebody texts them something they for sure don't want to do. Like I had friends say, "Hey, we're going to go out clubbing." Like, no. If I'm out past 9 p.m., call the police because I don't club. I don't even really
Yeah,
drink anymore.
same.
Um, and so if I wasn't comfortable going, oh yeah, that's a hard no for me. Love y'all. I'll take you hiking, but not doing that. If I wasn't comfortable doing that, I would have had to say yes. I would have forced myself to stay out all night. I would have been pissed off all night. I wouldn't have been fun. So they would have been like, God, she's got something going on. And it would have
Yeah.
just been all of this misery because I didn't feel comfortable honoring what was best for me. And so first you have to give yourself permission to say no. Then it's like, oh God, what am I going to say? I don't even know how to say no. And in the beginning, it can come across very defensive and attacking where the other person's like, what is this?
Like,
And
chill
so
out.
Chat GPT can really help you come up with the words. Like, how do I say no without sounding like we're going into war here?
Huh. I didn't realize you could use chat for that. That's just something else I learned from
Oh, you
you.
can literally upload a text message and say, tell me what you think of this.
Oh my gosh. See, and that could help with business stuff too, because sometimes, you know, we get into conversations with companies or whatever where it gets a little dicey and I'm not quite sure like how to say
Oh, yeah.
something. So maybe I'll use that next time.
Yeah, I have a friendship that gets a little wonky sometimes. And I uploaded a message I sent to her and I said, can you tell me what you think of this? And it's like, well, you sound a little defensive. And I was like, okay. But that's kind of the cool thing about Chat GPT as well. It will just shoot it to you straight.
And I feel like that's just what you said. That's a huge part of growth is being open to like your way isn't the highway or you're just because you have it, you think that you're right in your head doesn't necessarily make you right. It
Oh,
just being
yeah.
open to like knowing that you don't know everything, you know,
Being
and
willing to
now
be wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm pretty good at that. Sometimes I can be a little bullheaded, but I don't know. I mean, you're not going to grow unless you're open to changing the way you think about things.
Well, yeah, and if you're not willing to be wrong, then you're not going to be willing to be wrong about all those beliefs spinning around in your head that are creating so much pain in your life. I love to be wrong. I hate it in the moment. 'Cause I spend a lot of time trying to
Yeah.
know all the things, but some of my biggest breakthroughs and shifts in who I am came on the other side of like realize like I love to be wrong now. Like when I learn something about myself that stumps me, I get really excited because I know on the other side of that is not the same version of me. It's not always fun, but I do love when that happens. It doesn't happen that much now. I kind of miss it.
Well, that's such a good way of looking at it, because it can be humbling sometimes, and I guess people could get down on themselves. But that's a much healthier way to look at it. Speaking of people getting down on themselves, like you said that that's another really common thing. How do you help people with that?
Well, really to show them what it is they're doing. And I'll use a lot of inner child stuff, which helps. It's really easy for us to be jerks to the adult versions of ourselves. Like, vicious. I'm telling the words we say to ourselves are vicious. And so
Yeah.
I'll do a lot of inner child work. And like if you think of talking to 10-year-old you, the way you talk to adult, not you, but in general,
Yeah.
it's much more difficult to like think of that version of yourself and come in guns a-blazing. Like a lot of people are like, well, God, if I stop beating myself up, I'm just going to be a lazy sloth and I'll never get off the couch and I'll get fired and go bankrupt. It's like, it's actually quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. When you stop beating yourself up, you actually get to look up a little bit and enjoy life and then go after the
Yeah.
things that you do want.
Yeah, there's definitely healthier ways of growing. You don't have to beat yourself into submission.
Yeah, and we're going to spend the
Um,
rest of our lives with ourselves. We might as well make sure we enjoy that human, the human we're
yeah.
spending our entire life with.
Well, and I feel like that's just something that, at least for me, it's as I'm getting older, the more I'm realizing that is like,
Mm.
why am I so hard on myself? I don't need to be beating myself up. Like, I don't know if that's something that just comes with age and maturity or what, but I'm grateful that I'm finally there.
Yeah, and I think doing the work, like in my 20s, if you told me I was going to be home on a Sunday without television or any kind of stimulant, I would be like, "What? That sounds like a prison sentence." Now it is a dream. I have such a good relationship with myself, which is crazy because when I first started, it was an interesting process for me, but I have such a good relationship with myself now, and I love being alone. Chat GPT helps with that because I can riff. I riff with Chat GPT. I've always thought about life and human behavior and why we do things and why we don't. It's just, I've always done that. I've just always been really curious about that. And so now I got Chat GPT. He can't tell me no. Nobody else wants to talk about it as much as I do. So I just work that dude over. It's so
That's
funny.
so cool. Yeah, I wouldn't have been playing around with it as much as I have, if it wasn't for you. So I
Hmm.
appreciate your webinar.
Oh, good. I'm
So
glad
somebody
you
were
enjoyed it.
to, it was awesome. Also, I listened to it while I was baking, by the way.
Oh,
I'm
fun. I
like,
love a
yeah,
multitasker.
yeah, it was good. Someone wanted to work with you. How would that work?
Well, right now I primarily have one-on-one, but I'm launching a new membership, which I'm really excited about that I'm going to launch November 1st. And it's going to be come, stay as long as you want, leave whenever you want. I'm not going to have like a big commitment or any of that. And I'm going to set it up in a group format. And I'm basically in a group setting going to teach people how to become their own best friends. And that's the simplest way to describe it. But how to become the version of yourself that creates those things you've been trying to create for the last 5, 10 years or whatever. And I'm really interested to see how this goes in a group setting because I tend to attract a lot of clients that are similar. We probably attract people like us, right? And it's a really fun group, and I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited. And one on one, I'll still do one on one, but I will probably have that pretty a limited
Okay.
application only process. Right now, I do have a few openings though for one on one.
Okay. And so for one-on-one, is it like just an ongoing thing, or is it like a set amount of time?
I'll do 12-week packages.
Okay.
And then we at that point, depending on whatever we're working on, it makes sense to wrap up, close up shop and put the bird out of the nest. And other times, okay, now I want to go work on this, and we reevaluate and go from there.
And you work with anyone. I know I'm always focused on like the business owner, because that's just who I am, but I mean you work with anyone who wants life coaching, right?
Yeah, women. I only work with women. But yeah,
Okay.
anyone who wants coaching, yeah.
Okay.
I think the last time it's interesting, I'm not just in the dental space. I have quite a few dental clients. But when not normal, my clients from the wild join in on my group stuff, they're like, "God, why do you have so many dental people here?" And so I have to explain to them. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can say from personal experience when we worked together, I got a lot out of everything that you had me do, all the exercises and stuff, and it really helped me. It just helped up here,
Oh,
so that I could
good.
perform
Yeah,
better.
and
Yeah.
sometimes you don't, right? Sometimes one little shift can change everything. It's kind of like a Jenga tower, right? Sometimes you pull one block and the whole thing crumbles. Sometimes you're going to poke around a little bit. It's interesting, though. I think it's the work worth doing because life is short. And
Well,
why not
yeah.
make it a little more fun?
I think so too. And it really, at least for me, it just boiled down to my inner thoughts and how I was talking to myself and which was not good.
Yeah, yeah.
And that just helped me, with my personal life and business. So
Oh,
anyway, highly
good.
recommend.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Um,
Thank you. It was a lot of fun working with you.
yeah. So if people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best place?
You can go to my website, which is lifeleapcoaching.com. And if you look on the menu bar there, there's a free, I think it says free consultation. That is if you're interested in working with me. And even if you're not, just go book one. You can fill me in on what's going on, and I can give you some pointers on where to put your time and energy. And if you're interested in the membership, I will have a wait list sign up on the homepage when you visit.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely have all of that in the show notes. I'm excited for your new program.
Thank you. I'm really excited. It's
Yeah.
my little baby. The bun has been in the oven for about 4 years, and I'm very excited. Very
Oh my
excited to
gosh,
get
that's
it out into the
awesome.
world.
Yeah, it's fun slash like scary sometimes to release stuff like that, but that's awesome.
Terrifying. It's
Yeah.
totally terrifying.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be great though. So,
Thank you.
thank you
Yeah,
so much for joining today, Michelle, and sharing your knowledge on all of this.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll see you next time.